Welcome back to The Bulwark Goes to Hollywood. My name is Sonny Bunch. I'm culture editor at The Bulwark. And I'm very pleased to be rejoined today by Sean McNulty over at The Ankler, author of the Wake Up Morning Newsletter. It's the first email I read every morning. Everybody should. It's the best roundup of what is going on in the business. Thank you for being on the show, Sean.
Thanks for having me back, Sonny.
So the reason I wanted to get you on today was to talk about what I think is not only going to be the biggest business story of this week. Full disclosure, we're taping a little bit early this week. But also, I think one of the big news stories of the year, which is the merger of UFC and WWE into a kind of giant combat sports-like entertainment. That will be, I think the new company is valued at something like $21 billion or something like that. Some enormous amount of money. But walk us through what happened here. You spoke to WWE, the WWE CEO, right, about this deal?
Yeah, briefly in the morning of. So the deal broke Sunday night via CNBC, and then the official statement came out very early on Monday morning from Endeavor, the parent company of UFC, and WWE announcing this deal. So I talked on the phone with Nick Khan, who's CEO of WWE. They're pushing a lot of synergy. The flywheel is a big term that they use, So Endeavor, I don't know how wonky you want to get the Endeavor business, but Endeavor owns many businesses. One of them is the William Morris Agency. They own a company called IMG and in a big events business with On Location. They do big VIP ticket packages. They do kind of events around events with brands and kind of things to upsell live events as well. And they have a sports technology division as well, which is going to launch in Q1 as part of their earnings report. And they have USC in a sports division. It also includes the Professional Bull Riders Association, European basketball, and a few other small leagues, which are not part of this deal, but they do own some sports leagues. So they're essentially, again, combining forces with WWE, if you will, contributing UFC to this new company, which gives them a 51% stake ownership of this UFC WWE company. Their ticker is TKO, which I thought was pretty priceless. That one was pretty good. And WWE shareholders still have a 49% stake. Obviously, Endeavor as a parent company runs or owns the company, but the WWE shareholders, still keep a 49% stake in the company. So that's kind of the overall business metrics of it. But they see clearly a lot of overlap in audiences, potential to increase sponsorship money, to increase ticket value, and remember, as a part of WME, the agency division, they sell a lot of sports rights. So they did the big deals for the Big 12, for the Big 10. I believe they did the men's March Madness deal a few years back. So they're about maximizing value for all their clients. They represent major movie stars, things along those lines, but for sports leagues. And as sports becomes the new most valuable, product to have in this streaming network TV world, they feel, that combination unlocks more value in WWE, so they can get the most value for it, not just in the U.S. but worldwide.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really interesting to see how focused everybody is on live entertainment, live sports, for the reasons you mentioned. I mean, this is what is fascinating about this deal is that WWE has been looking for a buyer for a while. They there was some talk about maybe Comcast would buy WWE, which makes some sense because the WWE hub is on Peacock, right? That would make a bunch of it would make a lot of sense for Comcast. It would be a great deal for Comcast, but it wouldn't necessarily be the best way to maximize revenue for WWE or for value for the shareholders there, because the future is selling these rights packages to the highest bidder on a rotating basis, right?
Exactly right. And that's worldwide. So just to give you some scope, at WWE, media rights is, I think it was about 75% of their revenue. So that's how much of the company is based on selling the rights to Japan, to Australia, to Abu Dhabi, and of course in the US as well. So and UFC, about 71% of their revenue is based on media rights. So these companies, while we think of, they must make so much money at the events, which they do, the majority of money to maximize here is in selling the rights worldwide and, to your point, in perpetuity in various cycles. And these things, as we've all witnessed in any league for the past 30 years, have only gone up in value to this point. Now that more streamers are competing, the WWE announced, when they did their deal in the UK, they had 6 bidders, for the rights for WWE. So they're not seeing any kind of lag in that. So yeah, that's the real value there. These big media deals, and they're all not about to be, but they're in the US. The WWE is on Fox, of course, on broadcast on Friday nights, and on USA Network on cable. And both of those deals are up in 2024 to be renegotiated. They have what's called the right of first refusal, which just started right now. So they have the first bidder to make a deal and get it done early if they want. If the WWE and now WWE-UFC is happy with the money, they can get that done. If they think they can get more money on the free market, then those rights go out to whoever wants them. So, and then the UFC, which of course is on ESPN, those rights are up, and ESPN Plus, probably even more so. Those rights are up in 2025, and the Peacock deal you alluded to with WWE for streaming in the US is up in 2026. So this deal, which is supposed to close by end of this year, which should solidify that as they go into these important rights renegotiations.
Yeah. Can we talk a little bit about ESPN and UFC? Because I find this deal to be really interesting for a bunch of reasons. One of which is I used to know a guy at Disney who was like, what actually makes us tons and tons of money? The UFC. Like just the UFC. It is an enormous cash cow for us. We make tons of revenue off of that, and nobody ever talks about it because it's not sexy like some of the other stuff. But it's an enormous revenue driver, right?
For the company at Disney, I mean, for ESPN Plus, certainly. Yep. I mean, they're about at 25 million subscribers. How many of those are bundle subscribers? Because again, you can get that Disney bundle, where you get Hulu and Disney Plus and ESPN Plus. So a big contingent is probably that. But Sonny, name me something else that's on ESPN Plus exclusively.
Yeah, no, I had no idea. Nothing.
Right. So they own the space. So yeah, exactly. Not only is it a passionate and pretty sizable fan base, they're the big draw on ESPN Plus. To sign up for, I think it's up to at least $10, if not $11 a month now. It's pretty pricey. It used to be down about $7 earlier back in 2022. So it's not nothing to buy it on its own. Again, if you Disney bundle it, the costs go down. So it holds a lot of sway at ESPN Plus right now without having any other major rights exclusively for ESPN Plus. We'll see if Bob Iger, changes that or not in the next couple of years. But as of now, they're the only show in town really on ESPN Plus.
Yeah. So what does So what does this mean then going forward for WWE and UFC? I mean, are they going to be packaged together as if you want one, you got to get the other one, or is it just going to be like we're going to sell rights here, we're going to sell rights here? It's all we're just creating more competition to generate, frankly, more revenue.
Right, and this is the big question. The years I mentioned are a little bit staggered, and there's streaming and there's broadcast elements to it. But the more windows you create, Sonny, the more paychecks you can get in. Where if you give somebody one big thing for broadcast and streaming, you get a big check. But the more you can split it up, chances are you make more money. So I think the big question that maybe is starting to arise is there going to be a big streaming service, for combining the UFC and WWE into one? But let me just give you a little snapshot about how much money these things are making in the U.S. alone. So the existing rights deals, this is before the renewals, which will presumably be for more money, for WWE and UFC for all those deals that I just mentioned is about $1.1 billion a year. So that's the number you need to hit in streaming service revenue to make up just for the Fox deal, the USA deal, the Peacock deal, and the ESPN deal for those two networks. That's a lot of math. I mean, you remember WWE used to had a own streaming service until they did the Peacock deal. It only got up to, about roughly 1.5 million subscribers paying $10 a month, which is fine, but that's only $80 million a year. That's nowhere near, the money that they get. They get over $750 million in U.S. rights alone, now the WWE, through those deals I mentioned. So there's a lot of math to make up there. Plus, if you're doing your own streaming service, you have to do all the marketing. You have to do all the tech support. You have to do the customer retention. All those are very expensive costs on top of the money you're leaving on the table just to have the rights. So I think the arms dealer approach you mentioned, Sonny, is where I would say they'll probably go with in these new renewal deals because they'll be A, very much in demand, and B, being a rights dealer is nice. You don't have to deal with that customer acquisition thing, and you get the flywheel of being in the Disney empire to be promoted across ESPN and Hulu and other things like that, where if you're doing it yourself, you got to buy all that stuff. You are a lone wolf operator there. So there's something to be said there. Now, whether it stays on Peacock or do you look at Paramount Plus, who maybe is infamously, playing, creating content for Between the Coasts, with the Yellowstones in 1923. Is that a better demo fit for the WWE versus Peacock? And will they step up with a check? And the WWE can pit them against each other and have a bidding war, which is what you want as a rights holder.
Yeah. I mean, it's fascinating. I'm gonna hop back to sports in a sec here, but I do want I love this. I love this arms dealer concept because it really crystallizes the two paths studios and sports leagues and everybody else can take here going forward. Because you've got a studio like Sony, Columbia Pictures, right? It says, well, we tried to do the streaming thing with Crackle, didn't quite work.
Sorta, yeah, exactly.
We tried to do the PlayStation Network, that didn't entirely work. And instead we're just going to sell first runs of our movies to Netflix for $1 billion a year, and that's that's easier, and it makes more financial sense. I do wonder if we're going to see more of that going forward.
I think, that's the great realization that's happening right now, Sonny, in Hollywood, is, from about 2018-19 until about 2022, the thing was, we're bringing it all in-house. NBCU, rebought The Office for Peacock, even though it was making, I think it was, $400 million a year from Netflix, whatever the deal was. They said, we're going to, when you keep that in-house, you lose that $400 million. Friends at Warner Brothers for HBO Max, we're taking that off Netflix. And that was I think a $500 million a year check or whatever it was, major money because we want to focus on the streaming service. And now everybody's kind of going back to, was that such a bad thing to have this elsewhere and having those checks from a revenue? Everybody's back to revenue, Sony. How much money and profit are you making? And keeping this stuff in-house, some of it is important, but doesn't need to be exclusive. Can I also sell part of it to you? The Office also exists on Comedy Central still. You can turn on any cable network in the country for the linear TV viewers and still watch The Office. It's not exclusive everywhere. So this back to becoming arms dealer, ethos is definitely coming back in vogue. Sports, 100%. I think that's what this WWE UFC, value they see there. But in any TV rights, certainly we've seen HBO do this. They've been selling Westworld rights to Pluto, took it off HBO Max. Everybody's finding value. There are other paychecks where it's having zero value for them on HBO Max. Why don't we put this somewhere else where we can get a check? It may not be $1 billion, but it's money. Money is money.
Well, and it wasn't just zero value; it was negative value. I mean, you had to pay. You had to pay for they were paying. Whatever we're calling residuals now. The rights, the rights to the creators to license it for streaming.
The actors, and exactly. So there's hidden costs that everybody thinks, you can just put it on there forever and it's free. I'm like, this isn't YouTube. That is not how streaming these services work. There are other rules that affect here that are what we call sunk costs, Sonny, where it's like, that's not, you're starting in the hole. You have to get viewers to get back to zero, and then on top of that is when you would get any gravy, so to speak. So this and Bob Iger was also speaking this week, the CEO of Disney, about what's his philosophy going forward, and it seemed to imply the Marvel, Disney, Star Wars will stay on Disney Plus, but everything else, so presumably all the Fox library he bought and The Simpsons and things along those lines, maybe there's leeway to sell all of that stuff to other third parties and not keep it all on the Hulu property or whatever Hulu's going to become, or Disney Plus for that matter. So there's just a rethinking of this, Sonny, where it's like, did we left a lot of money on the table here in doing this strategy, and they're not seeing the results, especially in the US, as streaming subscriber growth kind of has plateaued at certain levels for most people, that maybe there's other checks to get here, as we're, again, being asked by Wall Street, where's your profit? Well, you're not going to get it by those subscriber numbers anymore. You're going to get it by selling stuff off to other people. So it's kind of everything old is new again in Hollywood, Sonny, as always.
Yeah, it's always funny how that works out. All right, so back to sports here for a second. We got numbers last night on yesterday for the women's basketball. Again, we're taping this a little earlier in the week. That's a big bump in viewers for the women's NCAA tournament. I mean, is Are we going to see more equitable, shall we say, distribution of capital when it comes to the women's tournament going forward? Do you think when that deal comes up in 2025 or six, right? I mean, they still have a few more years.
Next year's the last year. Comes up
Okay,
in 24. Yeah. So the next tournament is the last one under that deal. Define equitable. I didn't even know. I read this morning in the Wall Street Journal coverage of it. The women's tournament rights deal as the fee is $34 million. The men's tournament is about $900 million. Yeah. I mean, look, there are different economics behind this and what have you.
I mean, it makes sense. There's at a certain point that did make sense because many more people watched the men's tournament. It was, much.
And to be clear, the men's tournament still, even the women's tournament, the championship got 10 million viewers. The men's first round averaged 9 million viewers across, So, I mean, there is a scale thing here, but that women's championship was 2x last year's number. They've been, and this year, Caitlin Clark's been a great story to follow. I don't know if you've been following it all, but, and a lot of great narratives this year, Sonny, which every year you're not going to get, but it's put it on the map. And guess what? Caitlin Clark is coming back next year. She's not going to the draft. So this is, they're in a great, back to that negotiating position, Sonny, about sports leagues. That's not a bad position to be in coming off next year. Presumably if Iowa does well again and they get back in there, the audience will return, and there's room, to have both, I think. And they've just been, quite frankly, ignored for many years. And it's a different style of game. But I loved it. I watched many games this year, and I watched many men's games as well. It's how do you schedule it, perhaps, so it's offsetting and not competing against each other would be, the first thing you want to look at. But, that rights fee seems very low. And if you get back to an experienced hand, like a William Morris Endeavor or an agency who knows how to sell this stuff, and you get more sponsors involved. And again, follow the money, Sonny, as you say, the men's tournament does they're bringing in over $1.1 billion in advertising revenue this year. So that makes it worthwhile. You're not getting that money in the women's tournament, but is there room for growth? Yeah. I mean, seemingly there's got to be here. So it could be a really good story to watch next year.
Yeah, it is fascinating, again, just from a business angle. The one more sports question. I didn't mention this in the pre-show, so if you don't have thoughts, no, we'll cut it out. But but one of the big stories here over the last few weeks and months has been the kind of slow motion and then very looks like it's speeding up motion collapse of the regional sports nets. Which is, again, we're talking about live sports, hugely valuable. I think there was news last week that the New York Yankees are headed off of basic cable. They're going to be, doing the streaming thing. What is going on there in that space?
It's collapsing. I mean, so this is a decades-long business. So we're talking regional sports networks just for everybody in the, so that's in New York. The Yankees are on the Yes Network. SNY, the Bally Sports Networks are very big in other parts of the country. It's very, very local to where you are. NBC Universal owns, I think, 3 or 4 of them at this point. Chicago and Philly, namely, have them. So they're around the country and each owned by kind of different operators. But they're built on the cable bundle. The cable bundle, has been lost 5%, 6%, up to 7% of the base. In 2022, it's only increasing. It's melting. And the beauty of it was that everybody was paying, even though, very, 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 very few people were actually watching. Mm-hmm. But as that starts to melt, that's less revenues being paid to each sports team for those rights. And at a certain point, these cable operators are losing money on the proposition, and they're saying, we're done. So here you go. And the regional sports networks are now being caught in the middle, being like, well, I'm going to go direct to streaming, but I got to charge the customer at least $20, if not at the Yes Network, I believe is $30 a month. Yeah. So, Nesson and the New England Sports Network in Boston's been doing this for almost 2 years now at $30 a year. I've heard very little, if any, data out of that, other than a lot of unhappy people about the tech that's behind it. So it's the U.S. sports consumer is understanding how much sports really costs when you see these multi-million-dollar contracts being paid. Oh, isn't that great? You've never felt the pinch before. Now you're going to be like, we're asking you to cough up the money now because the bundle is not subsidizing the cost of this anymore. And the teams counted on this revenue, the local teams, to guaranteed check. Again, back to those rights, Sonny. They didn't have to market the product. They didn't have to sell the product. They just, here you go. And it was on the Comcast, the Charters, or whatever it is to really do the nuts and bolts of the deal. they're saying goodbye. Comcast famously dumped MSG Network, which covers the Rangers and other sports teams here in New York a couple of years ago. So we're not paying anymore. You can't get the MSG Network in New Jersey, in the New York City area for a couple of years now. MSG is now also going direct to consumer for, I think, $25 or $30 a month. So, but they have to make that money back. Yeah. And are you going to make that same check from those subscribers? They don't know. This is what we're going to find out, Sonny. So it's a real precipice moment of the local teams. And we've always seen those team valuations, Sonny, right? Where you hear someone's team's selling for $3 billion. And that's predicated mostly on, again, sports rights.
Yeah.
And if that starts to dip in this area, that's a real, this is a big shift, Sonny. We don't have the answer to it, but it looks wobbly. And that's a big change that has not happened in about, I'd say, 30 years of the sports model.
Well, I mean, it's interesting too to look at the difference between Major League Baseball, or to a lesser extent NBA, also NHL, right, compared to the NFL, right? The NFL has a national deal. They sell all their games. All the games are on, Sundays and Mondays, and then I guess Thursdays and sometimes Saturdays. But Sundays and Mondays, right? That's like those are the big days. And all of those games get sold under the same package, and they all the owners all make out huge like bandits because they. But I'm an Orioles fan. I'm a Baltimore Orioles fan. So when I lived in the DC area, I would watch on MASN, the Mid-Atlantic Sportsnet, and it was just part of my cable package, and that was great. But the Orioles sports rights are not worth $200 million a year. I can't imagine for some network. I like who is. To your point, I don't see, and obviously, as you said, we don't have the answer to this. But I don't understand how the smaller market teams make up that money without some sort of huge bailout from like Apple TV Plus picking up all the rights to baseball all over the country or something like that. I mean, do you think that's in the offing? Is that a thing that could happen, or is it just still so atomized and localized that like the Yankees, for instance, would never sign off on like we're not going to be on Apple TV Plus and we can sell our rights to our market for $25 a month or a year or whatever it is?
Yeah, the divisional, it's not all one thing fits all, right? All MLB teams are not the same, and the money you can make in New York is not the money you're going to make in Milwaukee or even Baltimore for that matter, as you say. So that's a big issue. And is it a league or is it a team of a league of 28 different, 30 different individual businesses? So MLB is right. Baseball is the most. I'm not going to say in trouble, but they're the season that's starting right now. The NBA has been paid out already this year. They don't have a worry. They're a part of this, Sonny, but that won't come up again until the fall, which is going to be a long time in this. 6 months is going to be 2 years in this process. So the MLB as a league is, there's still in negotiations. The company still, Bally Sports is still going through its bankruptcy process, but talking about doing that, Sonny, and maybe there's an MLB TV streaming bundle where you can pay one fee and, it's split between all the teams and things like that. But to your point, as an Orioles fan, do you care about watching Rangers games and paying for them?
I'm not gonna do that. No, I mean,
exactly.
I mean, if I really cared, I guess I could get MLB TV, but I frankly don't.
But that's out of market too, so that doesn't cover. So they want to make that more expansive in market. Watch your local. You can watch out of market teams with that, but clearly it's not the most valuable thing to have. It's like you want to watch the team in your area.
Yeah.
So you as a consumer may have this other super streaming option for a certain price. Or Sonny, do you want to pay $25 to watch the Orioles a month every year?
Yeah. No, I don't. I don't think.
I don't know. Okay, well, we're going to find out from a lot of sports fans.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's just really interesting to think about. I mean, the biggest streaming sports deal that we've seen so far, of course, is Amazon picking up the rights to Thursday Night Football, and that's kind of a mixed bag, right? I mean, you were tracking the ratings on that all season long, and it did okay, but it didn't hit the benchmarks that they had set for advertisers, right?
Yeah, it underdelivered. They were promising, I think, I'm going to say 12.5 million. If I'm a little off on that, fine.
I think
but
that's right.
It vastly underdelivered. I mean, you're talking maybe 10, something, if that, even. I don't know what the final average was, but nowhere near what they promised. So, and they're talking about instilling what they call flex games now, where they, so usually you get the schedule and that's it. And Thursday, as you mentioned, is not the high priority for teams every week. It's traditionally been the lowest rated game of the week, even when it was on Fox and on NFL Network, the previous deal, the TV deal. Will changing the games, and you are based on the game. So they would see little spikes if there was more interest in the game. And if it's a dud, they had 2 Denver games this year, which were 2 of the worst games of the year. So, you're at the mercy of the luck there a little bit, but it's a lot of money, and NFL's not giving them money back. That's not how this works. Can they put flex rules in, which they're going to vote on next month, in May? The owners will vote on that if they can institute. So the second half of the year, like they do on Sunday Night Football, they can change the lineup and swap games out, but it's still not the high priority. Sunday night is still the priority. Sunday afternoon is still, you're talking 30 million, 25 to 30 million people tuning in for local games. Amazon, as we said, is getting 10 million. It's a hard argument to make in that regard. So maybe they'll get better at it, and people more, look, it's the first year. Let's see how it goes. They also have the Black Friday game the day after Thanksgiving this year, which could be a nice, late year boost for them as well, which will be free on Amazon it'll be free for everybody on Amazon Prime. So they're making that free to the public. So there's other things to come. The tech was great. Al Michaels was fantastic. So the production I thought was really good, but the audience was underwhelming for what they were expecting.
Yeah, I mean it's not the only underwhelming performance in the world of Amazon right now. There was a big story in the Hollywood Reporter earlier in the week, hitting the highlighting the completion rates on Lord of the Rings, and kind of the chaos over there. What is going on at Amazon? What is the buzz about town about what is happening within the studios there, because it's multiple studios,
right? Yeah, right. They bought one, right? Exactly. MGM, for $8.5 billion, which everybody pretty much knows is vastly overpaying for what that was worth. But welcome to the tech money. The piece wasn't, it was, I guess I put a big shrug emoji kind of going on. Nobody knows what is the metric. Amazon doesn't release any numbers for Amazon Prime Video in terms of, there's the famous, 200 million Amazon Prime subscribers. That's, for the shipping. And it's like, that's all, that's globally. And that's useless information, basically. So how much money are they making? What's a profit and loss? What's the whole point of this? It's not even number one job. The number one job for Amazon Prime is selling you shipping. That's how they make the money. They want to get you in the door to being an Amazon customer. That was the theory, Sonny, behind this whole thing. It wasn't like, let's start a streaming service. It was, let's add value to this thing so we can get more people in the tent and more people coming back into the Amazon universe to watch shows and movies and so forth. Football was next. They're big on sports, Sonny. They're the biggest, the streamer with the biggest sports ambitions globally. So this piece came out more about the studios, which they have MGM Studios and Amazon Studios. They own 2 different movie studios. They own 2 different, TV departments, and they all kind of compete against, the TV. The TV groups can counter bid for projects, against each other. If you're walking in the door there as a seller, if you have a show to pitch, it's like, well, who am I speaking to? There seemed to be, the takeaway in the piece was a lot of confusion still about what they even want, what the brand is, which is never a great thing. Not that, they're making everything to all people, but if the town, if the sellers are not real clear on that, and Amazon Prime Video has been around, it's not a new product, right, for years, that's not a great rep to have. And that was I think the gist of the piece. I was curious what your takeaways were, what your impressions were about the piece though.
Well, no, it's just fascinating to think about Amazon's uncertainty with its own video brand. Because, a friend who is a screenwriter, Zach Stentz, noted on Twitter that Amazon has a brand. You know what Amazon's brand is? It's dad shows. It's Jack Ryan and
right.
It's Terminal List and,
Reacher.
Reacher, or even The Boys, I think to a certain extent. I think that all kind of fits into again, dad shows is a good rubric there. If they could acquire Yellowstone, they'd have cornered the market on dad shows. That is not awards stuff. That's not kind of sexy. They don't want to be yeah, we're the guys with guns who go in and shoot stuff up. They want something slightly different. My other takeaway from it was just I could not believe the amount of money that they were lighting on fire on these overall deals. like people who people who they had signed and who they were paying, low eight figures to over 2 or 3 years and just produced nothing. I couldn't believe it. I was actually shocked because there's one thing I know about Jeff Bezos. It's that he doesn't mind spending money, but he hates wasting money. Does not like wasting money. And there's a difference there. Third takeaway, one last takeaway was that like the best value in that whole story for Amazon seems to be Donald Glover, who makes a buzzy show, The Swarm. It's not that expensive. I think it was like $30 million, something like that. Is doing numbers similar to their actual big, the Reese Witherspoon thing. I don't even know the name of that show because I like the dad shows. I'm not, but like it wasn't that expensive, and he, like, Donald Glover continues to be the most underrated and underappreciated talent really in town. I say this because I just finished binging Atlanta. I just got through it, so.
Gotcha. And he has he's doing Mr. and Mrs. Smith coming up as well at Amazon. So he is actually producing for Amazon. Right. Like, he is putting things up. But these first look deals, what we call them, talent deals, some infamous, they've existed in Hollywood for years with studios. Sometimes it's a vanity deal because you want them to act in your movies. Some actors really take it seriously, and they also have Michael B. Jordan has set up a lot of projects there, Donald Glover. So some people really are doing stuff there, but Nicole Kidman has an overall deal there, and she has projects, around town. She is not doing only Amazon things. And it's like, what are you paying for exactly? The question is like, she has a couple of things, but her next 5 projects, I think one of them is at Amazon. Yeah. So it's like, well, it's a lot of money to pay for and you're still paying her to be in the movie. That money, that check you're talking, that $10 million check is not, inclusive of their acting fee. That's an overhead deal. So it's a lot of money from what are you getting? And again, they don't release numbers. So even that Swarm number, I don't no idea what it's doing, but the male skew thing, just to touch back on sports, Sonny, and tie in football to that too, as to why Prime is going after sports. And it's like, they see an opportunity to kind of, skew into a dad show or a male demo. As Netflix has a lot of shows for a lot of people, but if you look at their top 10 of their TV series, a lot of reality shows, dating shows that are in there. Perfect Match has been on there for a few weeks now. Even Wednesday arguably maybe skews a little more female, but they have the Sarah Chalk show, the Firefly Lane, and Outer Banks. These are one of their big shows. They most of them skew to a female demo. So Amazon sees rightfully so, sees an opportunity to maybe own that male demo a little bit more, and that putting sports in that mix for them plays a much bigger role. So I see why they're doing it, but as to is it working? All this other stuff that's going on, it's the black box is never a good sign in my book, and they certainly have one. And Apple has the same problem of the same thing of like, what are you doing here exactly? So
Yeah, well, I mean, this is what Richard always says. What is Apple? Why is Apple?
What's the business model here? Yeah, exactly. Brand halo, which is always great.
Yeah. One last sports thing, and then I'll let you go here. I feel like nobody in America understands the importance for global user acquisition numbers that cricket plays. How big is the audience for cricket in India and elsewhere?
Yeah, so I just wrote about this today in the Wake Up newsletter. So for those who don't know, the world's largest sporting match, NFL, is taking place right now, all the way halfway around the world in the U.S. and India, called the IPL, the IPL Cricket League. 140 million people were the numbers on linear TV alone in India tuned into the opening day or opening match on Friday, which was March 31st. The Super Bowl, the Nielsen number was 113 million for the Super Bowl. Some numbers put up to 130 with additional viewing, but still below that number. And you throw in mobile viewing, which was about 60 million. You're talking 200 million people on one day in essentially one country that is other broadcast, other countries in Southeast Asia, watching a sporting event. So cricket is the biggest sport in the world. I know it's said a lot, but that's exactly what people mean when they say that. So what does it mean for, I read a lot about this, Sonny, but the rights deals were a big thing last year. Their rights deals, again, back to rights, were up last year before this season started. and the price essentially doubled. So between linear TV and streaming, previously Disney had both on their Hotstar service, which is their streaming service, and the Star service, which is their TV service there. The rights this year were split for about $600 million for each, so about $1.2 billion a season, which is, not NFL money, but certainly a big check, and much bigger than a lot of other sports leagues in the U.S. So, and the streaming service that got it, usually it's behind a paywall, you pay for it, put it on for free because they're a newer service and they're using it as a loss leader. So they had 50 million people sign up or download the app this weekend alone to watch these games. So they added 50 million new customers to their platform. So huge numbers, Sonny. When you look at, even back to the college, sports and the women's championship at 10 million, which is great, and that's a record and fantastic. On a global scale about sports, I know nothing about cricket, Sonny, so I want to make sure that that's on the record about the sport itself and how it's played and who the teams are. The Super Kings are very popular. That's really all I know. They played on Friday, so they were the cricket.
It's a thing.
Yeah, the IPL was only a 2-month tournament, Sonny, so it's done in May.
Yeah,
and it's almost like a super March Madness, if you want to. March Madness is 3 weeks. This is 2 months, and infinitely more popular. But it plays a key role in these burgeoning streaming services, and India's getting a lot of investment from the Netflixes, the Amazons, and Disney as a legacy scale there with their Star business, which they got in the Fox deal back in 2018, which is what all this stuff is based on there. Sony is also penning a merger there with a major player called Z, which is going to go through soon. So that's going to be another third player. And then a company called Viacom 18, which is kind of a local conglomerate called Jio, which is their big mobile phone provider. He owns everything. Reliant Industries. He's like the Amazon of India. I think he's the second richest person in the world, something like that. He's vastly rich. But anyway, he's the big player in the streaming service, giving away all this $600 million a year to build a streaming service. So it's a lot going on, a lot of activity, Sonny. Again, the revenues aren't quite as large, but the popularity is there.
Yeah, I was going to say that it's interesting because Disney had a fairly large drop. If I remember correctly, had a fairly large drop in the number of users, but didn't take as big a hit in revenue as people thought, because the average revenue per user in India is much lower than in North America and the rest of the world.
Yeah, that's the secret to the Disney Plus number that everybody loves to tout in the headlines of, I think it's about 162 million, whatever it was last time, Disney Plus. 1/3 of that is in India. And how much they make per subscriber? About 70 cents.
Yeah.
So the revenue there, I think I did the math recently in the wake up, but it was maybe $115 million in the first quarter total revenue, subscriber revenue. They've spent $600 million on cricket for this season alone. That's not good math.
Yeah.
There's other parts of the business and so on and so forth. But what's going to happen, because they lost the streaming rights, as I said, for this cricket league, which just started essentially at the start of the second quarter. So the question we're going to find out in early May is how many people canceled Disney Plus Hotstar, which is the name of their streaming service there. And that total back to that 162 or whatever it is, 162 million Disney Plus number is probably going to go down, for the first time. And that's just, again, it's not, when you look at the money, you're right, exactly right. And that's the narrative that Bob Iger is going to have to now try and, present to people, because they were just riding that Hotstar number to the moon and nobody was asking questions about, how much money they were making. And now they're trying to change, like, no, wait, well, that's not important anymore. The thing we were telling you for over 2.5 years, no, that's not the big deal anymore. Now it's about the money. And of course. So it's a debt. Bob Iger's an excellent communicator, Sonny. I never underestimate him, but I want to see how he kind of presents that to Wall Street.
I think that's true. I think it's actually true. I think he's the issue has been that we've all been kind of touting these eye-popping numbers,
right.
and very few people have actually said, like, wait a second, how much?
I've been saying it for a good year and a half in the wake up. I'm like, this makes no money. Stop looking at this. And
this is why I'm well informed, because I'm a reader of Sean McNulty at the Ankler. I always like to ask, as if there's anything I should have asked, if there's anything you think folks should know about. In terms of what's going on in the world, sports rights, anything else?
You've talked about the strike. We'll leave that. Who knows where that's going? But The upfronts are coming up, Sonny. So advertising, revenue. The upfronts are where the broadcast networks, and now this year YouTube and Netflix are doing the upfronts, which is about the third week of May, sell the bulk of their advertising inventory for the year. So they present their fall lineups for broadcast TV, and it's a dog and pony show.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've been reading anything in this sector of the advertising business, has been very challenged and it's been down, and no one knows when it's going to rebound. And it's not, there's a lot of eyeballs on how much money is going to be coming into this and what the ad rates are going to be. Watching a lot of these, the inflation metrics, the unemployment, all the larger economic signs that everybody's trying to read the tea leaves on here. That's still, for me, I still couldn't really even tell you. And a noted analyst, Moffett-Nathanson, put out a note saying, there's a belief among the studios, or there was, that this will rebound in the second half of 2023. This business will come back. His note was, I'm not seeing a lot of things that point to a lot of confidence in that. And the upfronts, when they happen, will be your canary in the coal mine of that. So that is, it's about we're recording, it's that on early April. So it's about maybe 5-6 weeks away when we start, this all begins. So that's the next thing I'll be keeping an eye on, certainly coming up. That will be a big narrative in about a month. So that's out there in the ether.
Yep. All right. Thank you again for being on the show, Sean. Again, I'm I have to say that just personally, I am also very excited to be on the same kind of masthead real estate as the Wake Up and everybody else over at the Ankler. So this is a nice little bit of synergy here. for me.
All we need now is a flywheel, Sunday, and we'll be all set.
We gotta have a live event. Can we do live? Taylor Swift just sold out the AT&T Stadium here 3 nights in a row. I think we could probably, if we get Richard to fly out to Dallas, we could get at least one night of 80,000 people.
Me singing is probably not going to add any subscribers, Sonny, I hate to tell you, but we'll work something out. We'll do a big ARPU presentation. It'll be a lot of fun. Right. Average revenue. There we go.
Right. All right. Thanks for being on the show, Sean. My name is Sonny Bunch. I'm culture editor at the Bulwark, and I am very excited to have everybody here listening. Hope to see you next week.